Wait, what?
Welcome to Weiwat's The W Files, where we dive into mysteries that challenge what you think you know and spark that sense of wonder. Today, we're taking on the science of the impossible, or at least the highly improbable. Could telepathy, precognition, and mind-matter interaction actually be real? Is consciousness more than just brain activity, something like an invisible force field shaping reality? What does modern research say about so-called psychic abilities, and does quantum mechanics play a role? And here's something wild. Could our collective thoughts actually create subtle ripples in reality? That's what the Global Consciousness Project is trying to detect. Our guide into this mind-bending territory is Dr. Dean Radin, a scientist pushing the boundaries of materialist science. He's not just tossing around ideas for fun. He's spent his career researching everything from psychic espionage and remote viewing to precognitive warnings and intuitive magic. And today we're diving into the evidence, the skepticism, and the mind-blowing implications of a world where consciousness might actually shape reality. All right, let's get into it. Dean Radin is the kind of scientist whose work sounds like it belongs in a sci-fi novel, except he's backing it up with real research. No stage tricks, no spoon bending for show. As the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, he's running controlled experiments to test telepathy, precognition, and mind-matter interaction. The goal isn't just to speculate, but to see if what we call paranormal has a legitimate scientific basis. Radin has a PhD and has written multiple books, including Real Magic, Entangled Minds, and Supernormal, where he lays out the evidence for these abilities. And he's not just asking whether these phenomena exist, he's actually testing them under rigorous conditions. Let's start with telepathy and the Ganzfeld experiment, one of the most well-known studies in the field. The idea is to create the perfect conditions for mind-to-mind communication. Here's how it works. A receiver is placed in a sensory-reduced environment, half-cut ping-pong balls over their eyes, white noise playing in their ears. Basically, a setup designed to mimic deep meditation. Meanwhile, a sender in a separate location focuses on a randomly chosen image or video, trying to send that information mentally to the receiver. The receiver then describes any images or impressions that come to mind, and later their responses are compared to the actual target. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you run this experiment over and over, the hit rate sometimes comes out higher than what chance alone would predict. In a purely random world, there shouldn't be any consistent success. But some studies suggest there's more going on. Of course, this is where things get complicated. Science loves consistency, and while some experiments show intriguing results, replication hasn't always been easy. Radin acknowledges that there might be unknown variables affecting the data, making it tricky to say with certainty whether telepathy is real or if something else is influencing the results. But that's the big question. Is this just statistical noise? Or are we catching a glimpse of something about consciousness that science hasn't fully wrapped its head around yet? And Radin doesn't stop at telepathy. He's also looking into something even more bizarre, mind over matter. One of his experiments, amusingly called Telebelly, explores an idea that sounds like it came straight out of a sci-fi romance. Can one person's thoughts affect another person's stomach activity? Yeah, it sounds strange at first. But think about how often we talk about butterflies in the stomach or having a gut feeling. Emotions don't just stay in our heads, they show up in our bodies. So the question is, can a strong emotional signal from one person actually influence another person's physiology? That's what this experiment is trying to figure out. And then there's precognition, the ability to sense the future before it happens. If that were real, let's be honest, we'd all be trying to predict next week's lottery numbers. But while no one's cracked that particular mystery, Radin has spent years investigating whether humans can pick up on future events in subtle ways. He even has a personal story about it. Back in college, he felt an overwhelming, inexplicable urge to press a button at a specific moment. Later, it turned out that action lined up eerily well with an external event, too precise to feel like coincidence. Was he just lucky? Was he unconsciously picking up on something beyond ordinary perception? Or was he tapping into a deeper layer of reality where cause and effect don't work the way we assume? Personal stories are great, but science needs data. So Radin turned to presentiment experiments, studies designed to test whether the body reacts to future events before they actually happen. Here's how those experiments work. Participants are hooked up to sensors measuring their skin conductance and heart rate, basically how their bodies respond to stimuli. Then they're shown random images. Some are neutral, like a peaceful landscape. Others are emotionally intense, a car crash, a violent scene, something shocking. But here's the twist. The researchers analyze the participants' physiological responses before the image even appears. And here's where things get weird. People consistently show stronger physiological reactions right before seeing emotionally charged images. If this were just random, you wouldn't expect to see a pattern. But these results have been replicated across multiple studies, and the data suggests that, on some level, our bodies might be anticipating events before they actually happen. Which raises some big, unsettling questions. Is time as linear as we think? Do we have subtle awareness of future possibilities? And if we do, what does that mean for free will? Those are some heavy concepts, and cracking them might take more than just a few scientific studies, or at the very least, a lot more coffee. Rethinking reality isn't just about questioning time and consciousness. It's about figuring out how these forces interact. Ever had a gut feeling that turned out to be right? Maybe that instinct is tapping into something we don't fully understand yet. But telepathy and precognition? Those are just the warm-up. Dean Radin is taking things even further, diving into something even more radical, whether the mind can actually influence the physical world. Now, before you start picturing full-blown Matrix-style reality bending, let's set some expectations. This isn't about dodging bullets in slow motion or levitating objects with sheer willpower, at least not yet. But the idea that consciousness might play a direct role in shaping reality, that's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Even historical accounts point to strange phenomena linked to focused intention and deep belief. Take St. Joseph of Cupertino, a 17th century mystic who was reportedly seen levitating during moments of intense spiritual focus. While floating saints aren't exactly something Radin is testing in his lab, the big question remains the same. Can focused thought create measurable changes in the material world? One of Radin's most intriguing experiments, the Sigil experiment, is designed to test exactly that. If you're thinking this sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, consider how much psychological weight we already give to symbols. Logos, religious icons, personal talismans, they all represent something bigger than just their design. Many cultures believe they hold power beyond mere aesthetics. The idea behind the experiment is simple. A sigil, a symbol linked to a specific goal or intention, is created, and participants focus their thoughts on it, attempting to influence a physical target. Now, nobody's trying to levitate an apple here. The goal is to see if subtle but measurable changes occur, like shifts in random number generator outputs, differences in plant growth, or even cellular behavior. And if focused thought can influence something as small as a single cell, what else might it be capable of? And speaking of unexpected experiments, here's one that might make you rethink your snack choices. Researchers have tested whether intention can influence something as ordinary as chocolate. Yes, chocolate. In this study, experienced meditators focused positive intentions on a batch of chocolate, essentially blessing it. When people ate this intention-infused chocolate, they reported a slight improvement in mood compared to those who ate the regular, unblessed version. Now, no one's suggesting that we replace therapy with magically enhanced candy bars. But if thought alone can measurably affect someone's experience of food, that's worth paying attention to. Another experiment takes this idea even further, looking at water's potential to hold conscious intent. Some studies suggest that plants watered with intention-charged water grow better than those receiving regular water. Skeptics argue that subtle environmental factors, or subconscious biases, could be influencing the results. But the fact that these studies keep emerging across different research fields suggests we might not fully grasp the relationship between consciousness and the physical world just yet. And if even the tiniest thought can ripple outward and create change, what else might we be influencing without realizing it? But this concept of consciousness shaping reality doesn't just stop at mood or biological effects. It might extend all the way to quantum mechanics. That's where things really start getting weird. Enter the Global Consciousness Project, a large-scale experiment that sounds like something straight out of a cyberpunk novel. Here's the setup. Random number generators, RNGs, are placed all over the world, continuously producing streams of random data, like rolling an endless number of digital dice. The hypothesis? During major global events, when millions or even billions of people are emotionally and mentally focused on the same thing, the randomness might shift in a statistically significant way. And the results? The data suggests that during historic moments, 9/11, the death of Princess Diana, major natural disasters, even New Year's celebrations, these random numbers actually deviated from their usual patterns. It's as if our collective consciousness is somehow imprinting itself onto reality. Which brings us to one of the most mind-bending questions in physics. What if consciousness itself is a fundamental force? The famous double-slit experiment in quantum mechanics has already shown us that light can behave both as a wave and a particle, and which way it behaves depends on whether it's being observed. That's led some physicists to wonder, does the mere act of observation change reality at a fundamental level? And if so, does that mean our minds are actively shaping the world around us in ways we don't yet understand? Of course, not everyone's on board with these ideas. Psi research, the study of psychic phenomena, remains a controversial field, and mainstream science has been slow to embrace it. Why? Well, for one, history hasn't exactly been kind to ideas that challenge the status quo. Throughout the ages, religious institutions often viewed things like telepathy and precognition as threats to their authority. If people could tap into unseen forces beyond institutional control, that was a problem. Modern science, on the other hand, has been built on a materialist foundation, the idea that everything can be reduced to physical processes. Anything that doesn't fit neatly into that framework tends to get dismissed outright. And then there's cognitive dissonance. People don't like ideas that shake up their core beliefs. If consciousness really does affect reality, it forces us to rethink everything we know. And that's a pretty uncomfortable thought. But here's the thing. If Radin's research holds up, the implications are enormous. It would mean that human potential is far greater than we've ever imagined. It would mean that consciousness isn't just something passively trapped in our heads. It's something that actively interacts with the world around us. And if that's the case, then the way we think, focus, and direct our intentions might be shaping reality in ways we're only beginning to understand. Breaking mental barriers isn't easy, especially when the evidence in front of us challenges what we've always believed. Our instinct isn't necessarily to reconsider. More often than not, we rationalize, reject, or just flat out ignore anything that doesn't fit into our existing worldview. It's human nature. We like our reality neat and predictable, and anything that suggests we might have misunderstood something fundamental about the universe, that tends to get pushed aside. And then there's the funding problem. Psi research has always struggled for resources, largely because it's considered fringe science. Meanwhile, mainstream topics like neuroscience and AI rake in billions. The result? Fields that question the very nature of consciousness itself often operate on shoestring budgets, making it nearly impossible to fully explore the data. It's hard to prove something exists when you don't have the resources to investigate it properly. But despite this, Radin is optimistic. He sees the landscape shifting. Advances in quantum physics, neuroscience, and even philosophy are starting to crack the rigid materialist view of reality. More and more scientists are beginning to consider the idea that consciousness might play a bigger role than we once assumed. And that brings us to something even more fascinating, the connection between psi phenomena and mystical experiences. This isn't just about reading minds or bending spoons. It's about those profound moments when reality itself seems to shift. The moments where you feel deeply connected to something bigger than yourself, like you've stepped outside the boundaries of ordinary awareness. Think about those aha moments where everything suddenly clicks, or those overwhelming feelings of awe that shake your understanding of the world. In fiction, it's that moment when Neo starts seeing the code in the Matrix, or when Luke Skywalker finally taps into the Force. These moments suggest that reality might be a whole lot deeper than what we perceive through our five senses. And here's the kicker. Radin believes that psi phenomena and mystical experiences might be pointing us towards something even bigger. The idea that consciousness isn't just a byproduct of the brain. Instead, it might be woven into the very fabric of reality itself. That flips everything upside down. Instead of treating psi as some weird quirk of biology, it suddenly becomes a window into understanding existence at a deeper level. It's like the difference between staring at a single line of computer code and understanding the entire operating system. Psi experiences and mystical moments might not be anomalies at all. They might be glimpses into how reality actually works. So if that's true, then the next logical question is, can we train ourselves to access these expanded states of consciousness? Radin thinks we can. He suggests that ancient practices like meditation, yoga, and other forms of inner exploration aren't just about relaxation or self-improvement. They might actually be tools, methods for training the mind to perceive and interact with reality in ways we can't even imagine yet. It's like finding out that those dusty old books on ancient wisdom and mystical practices, the ones we've dismissed as superstition, might actually contain the keys to unlocking human potential. Which leads to Radin's idea of the intuitive magician, a person who understands that reality is far more flexible than we've been taught and learns to navigate it using the full potential of consciousness itself. Now, intuitive magic might sound like something ripped straight from a Neil Gaiman novel. A world where reality bends subtly to intention, where unseen forces nudge events into alignment. But Radin isn't talking about wizards in cloaks throwing fireballs. The intuitive magician isn't some stage performer pulling rabbits out of hats. Instead, there's someone who, through practice and intention, learns to tune into the deeper, hidden patterns of reality. Rather than forcing change, they align with the natural flow of events, nudging reality in small but significant ways. So, think less David Copperfield, more Doctor Strange, subtly shifting probabilities rather than performing flashy illusions. And here's the fun part. Radin suggests this isn't some rare, elite ability. It's something we all have to some degree. Think about it. That gut feeling that saves you from making a terrible decision. Synchronicities, like thinking about an old friend only for them to text you moments later. Those weird moments when your playlist serves up exactly the song you needed to hear. We tend to brush these things off as coincidence, but what if there's something more? What if they're glimpses into a deeper reality? If that's the case, then we're all intuitive magicians in training. We just haven't fully developed the skill yet. So how do we tap into that potential? No spells, no potions, just awareness. Radin suggests a few simple practices to sharpen intuitive abilities. Mindfulness and meditation, training the mind to be more attuned to subtle patterns. Rituals and intentions, small symbolic actions that focus mental energy. Noticing synchronicities, paying attention to meaningful coincidences instead of dismissing them. It all comes down to recognizing that our thoughts, emotions, and consciousness might play a more active role in shaping reality than we've been led to believe. And if that's true, then the way we think, focus, and direct our intentions might be influencing the world around us in ways we're only beginning to understand. Can science actually study intuition and psi phenomena, or are we just talking about anecdotes and wishful thinking? That's the real challenge that Dean Radin has built his career around. He's not asking people to take these ideas on faith. He's working to bridge the gap between subjective experience and objective science. His approach? Keep it rigorous. Use controlled experiments to test whether consciousness interacts with the world in unexpected ways. Look for patterns in data that suggest reality might not be as fixed as we assume. This isn't about choosing between science and spirituality. It's about integrating them. Think of it like an Avengers-style team-up, where each discipline brings its own strengths to tackle a mystery bigger than any single one of them. And one of the biggest mysteries of all? The connection between consciousness and quantum mechanics. Take Schrödinger's cat, the infamous thought experiment where a cat is both alive and dead inside a box until someone observes it. It sounds absurd, but it reflects a fundamental paradox in quantum physics. Observation doesn't just reveal reality, it might actually shape it. If that's true, then consciousness itself could be an active participant in how reality unfolds. But what if it goes even further than that? Radin is fascinated by the idea of retrocausality, the possibility that the future might be influencing the present. This isn't just about predicting the future, it's about the future reaching back and affecting events before they even happen. We're talking time loops, paradoxes, and causality twisting in ways that make Back to the Future look like child's play. If the evidence for precognition is real, then time might not be as linear as we think. Future events could be rippling backward, subtly influencing decisions, emotions, and experiences before they actually happen. That might sound like science fiction, but some experiments suggest it's worth considering. Now, let's be honest. These ideas are radical, but if even a fraction of them hold up under scrutiny, they force us to rethink everything we know about time, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. And if reality is more flexible than we thought, what else might be possible? That's exactly why psi research faces so much resistance. Science has spent centuries reinforcing a materialist worldview, one where consciousness is just a byproduct of the brain, and reality follows strict, predictable laws. Challenging that is like trying to explain the internet to someone who still uses a rotary phone. If their framework doesn't include the possibility of wireless communication, then what you're describing sounds like magic. But Radin isn't trying to convert skeptics overnight. He knows that paradigm shifts take time. The history of science is full of once ridiculed ideas that eventually became mainstream. People thought Galileo was crazy for saying the Earth revolved around the sun. Einstein's theories of relativity sounded absurd at first. What seems unthinkable today might be common knowledge tomorrow. And if Radin is right, and our minds influence reality more than we realize, then the implications are both thrilling and a little unsettling. Imagine a world where focused intention could accelerate healing. Human connection could be strengthened by tapping into a deeper, collective consciousness. We could influence events, not through force, but by aligning with the underlying patterns of reality. It's an exciting vision, but as Uncle Ben wisely said, with great power comes great responsibility. If human thought really does shape reality in measurable ways, then what we focus on matters more than we think. Ethical responsibility becomes key. Any exploration into consciousness has to be guided by wisdom, self-awareness, and compassion. And this idea of interconnected minds shaping reality ties right back to the Global Consciousness Project. If psi phenomena are real, then it stands to reason that individual consciousness might not be so individual after all. What if human minds are part of something bigger? That's exactly what the Global Consciousness Project has been testing. Here's how it works. A network of random number generators, RNGs, is set up across the world, continuously spitting out streams of ones and zeros. Basically, digital coin flips. If consciousness is confined to individual brains, these RNGs should stay completely random, following the standard laws of probability. But that's not what's happening. During major world events, 9/11, natural disasters, the death of a global icon, even New Year's Eve, these numbers suddenly deviate from pure randomness. It's as if, during moments of collective focus and emotion, reality itself is registering a shift. It's like the entire world holds its breath, and these machines pick up on something, a kind of quantum mood ring detecting disturbances in the force. If this effect is real, it suggests that human consciousness isn't just private or isolated. It might be part of a larger, interconnected field that extends beyond the individual mind. And if our collective focus can create detectable ripples in physical systems, then what else might be possible? Could consciousness itself be a fundamental force of the universe, one that science is only beginning to understand? The Global Consciousness Project has been running for over 2 decades, quietly gathering data from random number generators, RNGs, stationed around the world. And the results? Statistically significant deviations from randomness during major global events. Natural disasters, terrorist attacks, even collective celebrations like New Year's Eve or the Olympics. The implications are staggering. If human consciousness, our collective emotions, thoughts, and intentions can influence physical systems, then reality might be more connected than we ever imagined. The GCP team continues refining their methods, searching for better ways to analyze the data and uncover these invisible threads linking human experience to the physical world. And whether we realize it or not, we're all part of a massive, ongoing experiment on the nature of reality itself. But if our collective consciousness can influence random number generators, what else might it be capable of? Whispers from the future. Can we predict disasters? This is where things get even more fascinating. Radin isn't just interested in proving psi phenomena exist. He wants to know if they can be useful. One area of research? Precognition, and whether it could be used to anticipate and possibly prevent disasters. Now, at first glance, this sounds straight out of Minority Report, people foreseeing catastrophes before they happen. But Radin isn't talking about replacing meteorologists and seismologists with psychics. Instead, he's asking, could human intuition be combined with data analysis to detect subtle warning signs that conventional instruments miss? Think about those strange but well-documented stories. Someone gets a bad feeling right before an earthquake and leaves a building just in time. Or they change their travel plans last minute and avoid a doomed flight. Are these just lucky coincidences, or is something else at play? What if the human mind picks up on whispers from the future, subtle patterns and cues that our conscious brains don't normally register? If so, could we harness this ability to create an early warning system? Not a crystal ball, but another tool in disaster preparedness? Remote viewing. A real-world X-Files experiment. Another area Radin and others have explored is remote viewing, the supposed ability to perceive distant locations without physically being there. And if that sounds like something straight out of the Cold War, well, it was. Both the US and Soviet governments ran classified programs investigating whether psychic spies could gather intelligence remotely. The most famous of these was the Stargate project, where trained individuals attempted to describe hidden military bases, locate hostages, and even track submarines, all without ever leaving the room. And here's where it gets interesting. The results were good enough for the US government to keep funding the program for over 20 years. Now let's take a step back. If remote viewing was complete nonsense, why would they pour millions into it for 2 decades? Officially, the program was declassified in the 1990s, and skeptics dismiss it as inconclusive. But many still wonder, if consciousness isn't bound by space, if the human mind can somehow access information beyond physical limits, then what does that say about the true nature of reality? And if the mind can do this, what else might it be capable of? The idea of remote viewing, using the mind instead of a drone to assess a crisis, might sound like something straight out of a sci-fi thriller, but for decades, military intelligence took it very seriously. Even after these programs were officially shut down, the fascination with their potential never really faded. Imagine the possibilities. Rescuing hostages without putting a high-risk tactical team in harm's way. Assessing disaster zones before first responders even arrive. Gaining intelligence in enemy territory. No satellites, no drones, just the power of human perception. If even a fraction of this is real, it suggests an entirely new way of interacting with the world, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about space, time, and consciousness. But psi research isn't just about intelligence gathering. Radin is also focused on a much more personal and practical question, the link between consciousness and healing. Psi for healing, mind over matter. While psychic espionage might grab headlines, one of the most intriguing aspects of psi research is its potential role in health and healing. And this isn't just speculative. Science already supports the idea that the mind has a powerful effect on the body. We know that. Stress weakens the immune system and contributes to disease. Mindfulness and meditation have been shown to reduce pain, lower blood pressure, and even speed up recovery times. The placebo effect proves that belief alone can trigger real, measurable physiological changes. So the question isn't, can the mind influence the body? We already know it can. The real question is, to what extent? Could focused intention, meditation, or even psi abilities be harnessed to enhance recovery, boost physical performance, or unlock hidden potential? And if so, how do we develop and refine these techniques? This isn't about rejecting modern medicine. It's about exploring how consciousness and intention could work alongside it to improve well-being. Telekinesis, the ultimate mind over matter question. And then, of course, there's telekinesis, the idea that the mind can influence physical objects. It's one of the most debated, most sci-fi sounding ideas in psi research. Some claim compelling evidence exists, while mainstream science remains highly skeptical. But Radin isn't interested in making grand claims. His approach is simple. Keep an open mind and let the data speak. The real question isn't, can we all start lifting rocks like Jedi? It's, what is consciousness truly capable of? Because if reality is more flexible than we've been led to believe, if consciousness plays a much bigger role in shaping the world than we ever imagined, then we're only scratching the surface of what's possible. What if consciousness isn't just something the brain generates? What if it's a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism? That's the bigger question at the heart of Dean Radin's research. It's a radical idea, sure, but it's one that echoes through mystical traditions, ancient wisdom, and even certain interpretations of modern physics. If consciousness isn't just inside our heads, but woven into the very fabric of reality, then we're talking about something far bigger than individual thoughts and emotions. Think of it like the Force from Star Wars, not as a mystical power, but as a field that connects everything, influencing the way reality unfolds. And if that's the case, then our thoughts, emotions, and intentions might be shaping reality in ways we don't fully understand yet. That realization comes with both power and responsibility. It's empowering because it suggests we have more influence over our lives than we realize. It's also humbling because it reminds us to be conscious of the energy we put out into the world. If our collective focus can ripple through reality, then what we choose to believe, feel, and focus on matters. Radin's work challenges us to rethink what we know, not just about psi phenomena, but about the very nature of existence. And while we may only be scratching the surface, one thing is clear. We're at the beginning of this journey, not the end. Who knows? The deeper we go, the more we might realize that reality is far more interconnected, flexible, and full of untapped potential than we ever imagined. That's a wrap for this episode of Weiwat's The W Files, where we explore the edges of what's possible and push beyond conventional thinking. Today, we ventured into telepathy and precognition. Can the mind access information beyond time and space? Global consciousness. How do random number generators detect shifts in human emotions? Mind-matter interaction. Can thoughts literally shape reality? Psi and mysticism. How does ancient wisdom align with cutting-edge research? Dean Radin's research isn't just about proving psychic abilities. It's about expanding our understanding of consciousness and its role in shaping the universe. And if our thoughts influence the world around us, then how we use that power matters. So, what if we're all intuitive magicians, and we've barely begun to unlock our potential? We'll be back with more mysteries, more questions, and more wait, what moments. Until then, stay curious, stay open-minded, and remember, reality might be way more flexible than we think.
Wait, what? Wait, what?